Hi, welcome to the Revelation, where we are continuing our study in the book of Revelation and also trying to see some of the ways it applies to our own life. We're trying to do some little application with it, as well as receive that blessing that comes because we're studying the book or reading the book. Revelation 11 is where we are. Verse 18, in our previous episode, we kind of went right up to this one. And 18 says this: The nations were angry, and your wrath has come. The time has come for judging the dead and for rewarding your servants the prophets and your people who revere your name, both great and small, and for destroying those who destroy the earth. Have you ever watched a movie or a book that is loaded with twists and turns, and suddenly you find yourself at a loss to follow the plot? Sometimes it's easy with all that's going on to get lost and lose sight. Or the flip side of that is you may be reading something or you may be seeing something that is previewing something else, and all of a sudden the spoiler alert pops up. And basically what they're saying in that moment is, what you're getting ready to see is a clue as to what's going to happen in the story or how it fits into the bigger storyline. Well, Revelation 11:18 is kind of a snapshot, a prophetic snapshot, a spoiler alert. In the midst of all the twists and the turns and all the things that are going on in the book of Revelation, this verse gives us kind of a snap of what's going on, because there's large gaps of time that are happening between the events in the book of Revelation. When you start seeing how things unfold, there's time that takes place, and then you get to the next thing, and you get to the next thing. And so sometimes the events are separated by so much time that we forget that for God and His roadmap, His plan, it's laid out very, very clearly. If you're living it or you're experiencing it real time, it takes a little bit longer. So there's some things that are going on here I want to point out to you. One, the nations are angry. When it says that, you got to go back and remember that we saw that the leaders of Jerusalem had killed God's witnesses. By the end of the tribulation, the kingdoms of the world are uniting against God, and He's going to pour out His wrath on those who oppose Him. So the nations are angry. The second thing I want you to see is that God judges the dead. At the great white throne of judgment, all of the unsaved from every age in history are called to appear before the righteous judge. That's Revelation 20, verse 13. Believers, on the other hand, will be brought before the judgment seat of Christ, not to determine their salvation, but to judge their works. And so, not only are people irritated and opposing God, but God also is now going to judge everybody throughout history. We also find out that rewards are going to be given to believers. The believers of the Old Testament, those who became believers during the tribulation, now receive the rewards. Church age believers have already gotten their rewards at the judgment seat of Christ after the rapture. And then fourth, God destroys those who destroyed the earth. The demons that have been turned loose to wreak havoc during the tribulation are going to be destroyed by God. And so Revelation 11:18 and into verse 19 shows us everything that needs to happen to establish God's kingdom just as He promised. So it gives us a picture of God's love and mercy and grace as we kind of look into that vision of the ark that's there in verse 19. We didn't read that, but being returned to the temple in heaven, it encouraged people through tough times. And that's where we get to this moment again where we have to slow down and remember that what we get in the book of Revelation helps us in the midst of those times where we think things are out of control and that God somehow has disconnected from the universe. He has not. And this is that reminder that there is a payday, there is a judgment day, there is a moment where all of these things begin to come together and make sense. And God is going to be faithful to those who follow Him. And so that means hopefully you and me. And I say hopefully. I know that if you're a follower of Christ, He'll be faithful. That's what the Word says. And so we have the luxury of being able to look at history and the unfolding of history and the unfolding of prophecy a little bit different, because we don't have to be afraid. We can be secure in it. We can know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God is at work and His hand is at work. And so we don't have to be afraid. And that is one of those repeated themes that we see throughout Scripture. Don't be afraid. And so when you read these words and we find out that people are angry against God, and we go back and we remember that God is with us, even in the darkness, even when it seems bleak, God is at work. Now again, tie this into not only this episode, but go back and rewatch the previous episode. And remember that this is that glimpse now of what's going on in heaven when it seems like all of this other stuff is falling apart in the history of the world. No, it's not. God's there and He's in charge. Make sure that you hold on to that, because that carries you through those turbulent moments. Just something to think about. We'll pick up again in another edition of Revelation, and we'll see what we can find as we continue to plow forward into this amazing book, and we'll be blessed.